Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we've got a really unique mission for our deep dive. Usually, we crack open a stack of research to pull out the facts inside a story.
Right, the what?
Exactly. But today, we're focusing entirely on the how, on the architecture of the story itself.
That's right. We're not analyzing a ghost or some cryptic phenomenon. We are scrutinizing the blueprint, the precise structural requirements laid out for telling a genuinely unsettling first-person account of the unknown.
And our source for this is a fascinating one. It's excerpts from Echoes of the Unseen, Personal Encounters with the Unknown.
And this book, or at least the part we're looking at, is almost like a technical manual for sharing these experiences. It lays out these incredibly specific, almost rigid rules.
Right, for how to structure these testimonies if you want them to be taken seriously.
And not just taken seriously, but to generate a very specific, lingering emotional response.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to really understand that formula.
Yeah, we want you to grasp the tonal and structural requirements. What it takes to turn just anecdotal information into something that feels like impactful testimony.
Because once you see this blueprint, you can analyze pretty much any account of the unknown and see why some stories stick with you.
And why others just feel cheap or, instantly dismissible.
It feels like we're trying to reverse engineer authenticity here.
We are. We're unpacking the recipe for a discussion that feels deeply real, immediate, and genuinely immersive. It's the delivery system that makes the content resonate.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What defines an authentic encounter with the unknown, according to this source material?
Well, we have to start with what the authors call the first-person imperative.
The first-person imperative.
Yeah, this is the absolute foundation. It is completely non-negotiable.
And what does that mean exactly?
It means the accounts must be the speaker's own real-life experiences. They have to speak about what they personally saw or felt or encountered.
So this is a zero-tolerance policy for secondhand stories?
Zero. You can't lead with, my friend told me this crazy story, or I heard about this thing that happened.
No, the emphasis has to be on I, me, my.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense. This one rule immediately elevates the content. It stops being gossip or folklore.
And it becomes personal testimony.
Exactly. The speaker is putting their own credibility on the line. When you, the listener, hear someone commit to, I saw this, that structured vulnerability, it just boosts the perceived truth of it all.
I see the structure now. By forcing that first-person rule, the sources are making the speaker inhabit the story completely. They have to make full responsibility for it.
Precisely. And that commitment then directly dictates the necessary tone. The sources are very clear that the stories must be realistic and unsettling.
And they specifically say to avoid what they call exaggerated fiction.
Yes.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. If the whole point is authenticity, how does the source define the line between a genuinely scary real experience and something that just sounds like, well, fiction?
What's so fascinating here is the focus on verisimilitude, the appearance of being true.
Okay.
If you're building a narrative around something that is, at its core, unbelievable, the context around it has to be completely and utterly grounded in the mundane.
So the power is in its connection to normal life.
That's what the blueprint argues, yes. The true power of the unknown isn't in the spectacle. It's in how it encroaches on your normal day.
So an example would be, if someone is describing this huge, complex event with bright lights and talking figures and dramatic music, that instantly fails the test. It feels too produced.
Absolutely. It feels like a movie. Think of the contrast. A realistic, unsettling account may be, the feeling of a crushing pressure in an empty stairwell.
Or a shadow that moved just a little too quickly in your peripheral vision while you were making coffee.
Yes, exactly. Exaggerated fiction, on the other hand, is a loud monster bursting through a wall.
It's the difference between grainy, real security footage that shows something just ambiguous and creepy,
right,
versus a big budget movie with special effects.
The document insists on keeping it realistic because the moment you introduce high theatrics, you completely undermine the personal testimony that the entire structure is built on.
The moment it sounds like a screenplay, you stop listening to the witness.
And you start watching the director. The source is crystal clear. Keep the account grounded. That commitment to realism is like the protective shell for the unbelievable content inside. Okay,
so we've nailed down the content rules. It has to be my experience, and it has to be realistic and unsettling.
Check.
But the structure of how it's told matters just as much. How does this blueprint mandate that we share these experiences? Let's talk about the conversational flow.
This is key. The source is absolutely adamant that this cannot be a lecture.
Or just two separate monologues.
Right, delivered back to back. It has to be a natural back and forth dialogue to maximize that feeling of immersion.
Yeah.
And they mandate a very specific 4-part structure for it.
A 4-part structure.
Yeah.
Okay, walk us through the steps they prescribe for this.
Step 1. A brief intro that sets a kind of late-night spooky mood, just tonal prep, maybe a line or two about the time of day or the topic.
Simple enough.
Step 2. Speaker 1 shares their own scary experience, sticking strictly to that first-person imperative we just talked about.
Okay, so that sets the baseline. Personal vulnerability, personal testimony.
Then comes the most crucial step. Step 3. Speaker 2 must react authentically to Speaker 1's story.
React first.
Yes, react first, and only then do they share their own personal incident. It's a genuine call and response. They have to acknowledge that shared emotional space before moving on.
And then the 4th step.
A short closing that leaves the listener uneasy.
Okay, I have to challenge this a little. If the goal is a natural back and forth dialogue, isn't there a risk that enforcing these 4 specific parts makes the conversation feel, well, less natural? Almost robotic.
It's a fair point. You're essentially creating a script for spontaneity, which sounds like a contradiction. But the source material addresses that exact risk. It does it through the requirement of genuine reaction in step 3. That's the key.
How so?
Well, think about it. If Speaker 1 finishes their terrifying story and Speaker 2 just responds with, "That's interesting. Anyway, my story is about a hitchhiker."
The whole thing just collapses, it falls apart.
It completely collapses.
Right.
The reaction is the structural mortar holding it all together. It forces the speakers to actually be present with each other, not just waiting for their turn to talk.
So they aren't just narrating their own separate incident. They're engaging with the shared reality that the first speaker just created.
Exactly. That required reaction showing genuine fear, maybe some nervous humor, or even disbelief. That detail ensures the dialogue stays human and immersive. It breaks the formula.
It proves to the listener that they're not just reciting prepared texts.
They're responding to a real-time emotional impact. If you, the listener, hear that nervous, slightly shaky laugh or a real shift in tone,
You're instantly drawn into the reality of that conversation. The source material is essentially requiring validation in real time.
and this brings up a really important question for analysis. By requiring that genuine emotional reaction, the source dictates that the synthesis of the experience, it has to happen in the moment between the speakers.
It's not passive.
Not at all. It requires critical engagement, not just the passive receipt of separate facts. They are building the atmosphere together, and you, the listener, are invited into that constructed reality.
So the main takeaway here is that the 4-part structure is the skeleton, but the emotional reactions inside that structure are what make it feel alive and authentic.
Correct. Without that moment of shared, transparent vulnerability, it's just two different people telling ghost stories in the same room.
The structure provides the framework for perceived truth.
But the reaction provides the humanity needed for immersion.
And that immersive experience links directly to what the source material calls the emotional endgame. That's what it's explicitly aiming for.
Yes, the desired tone throughout has to remain authentic, conversational, and immersive. It's to make sure the listener never feels like they're just getting an audio textbook on strange things. The goal isn't to educate you on, say, cryptozoology.
No, the goal is emotional resonance.
Exactly. And the sources spend a lot of time talking about the closing. They are adamant. It must be short, and its specific job is to leave the listener uneasy.
That's fascinating. It means the objective is absolutely not resolution. And it's definitely not comfort.
No.
If they offered a rational explanation at the end, like, oh, that was probably just sleep paralysis, or it must have been the way the light hit the window, they would fail.
They would completely dissipate the very feeling they spent the entire discussion building. The blueprint acknowledges that the power of the unknown is just. It's destroyed by finality.
You can't wrap it up with a neat little bow.
You can't. Like keeping the closing short and uneasy, the source preserves the sense that the world is inherently larger and stranger than we think, and that those strange moments are still potentially out there waiting for you.
It's about sending you away with that little prickling sensation, the one you get when you start wondering if you really locked the back door.
Or if that shadow in the hallway was just your coat on the rack.
The whole point is that lingering ambiguity. The success of the whole thing is judged by how long that emotional impact lasts after the talking stops.
They're prioritizing the emotional experience over providing any kind of external proof.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, when you encounter these kinds of discussions, understanding these rules gives you a really powerful critical lens.
You'll immediately notice when someone who is trying to follow this blueprint slips up. You'll hear when a speaker shifts from, I saw this myself, to, I heard this happen to someone else.
And you'll recognize that structurally, the narrative just sacrificed its integrity, at least according to these rules for impactful testimony.
Right. It allows you to appreciate the craft involved in sharing something so unbelievable in a way that truly feels believable. The rigidity of the structure actually forces an emotional openness.
So our deep dive into echoes of the unseen shows that this whole blueprint, it really emphasizes the process of sharing.
Yes, it's about validating the speaker's personal experience rather than focusing on external proof or neat categories. That vulnerability is the proof.
It's a powerful idea. We've analyzed the precise requirements laid out for creating these compelling, authentic narratives, focusing on first-person testimony, natural emotional reactions, and that specific four-part structure.
All of it designed to maximize a lingering sense of unease. And we found that the blueprint insists on radical realism, no theatrics, no exaggeration.
Because the truly unsettling moment happens when the strange intersects quietly with the everyday.
Exactly.
Which brings up a final thought. Building on that idea, the source strictly requires realism and personal testimony for maximum impact. So if the most effective way to share an encounter with the unseen is to keep it quiet, realistic, and unnervingly close to the mundane, what does that imply about the actual line between the strange and the truly ordinary?
It implies that the terrifying part isn't the monster you can see and categorize. It's the unrecognizable tremor in the background of your normal life.
That's something for you to mull over the next time you hear a creak in your house late at night.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of the unseen.
Until next time.